Howdy. Welcome back to Dion Talk. Landlording done right. A viewer reached out to me with a question, my opinion on their experience with the binder strategy. And if you're familiar with my content, I think you're going to enjoy how this worked out. If you're not familiar with my content, you're going to learn that I have a strategy that gets my tenants to request a rent increase. Imagine if your tenants asked you to pay more rent. I've used this strategy a few dozen times, and so far it's worked every time. One day it might not work,
but not today.
And if that day ever happens, I'll definitely make a video on it. So the idea here is the person who reached out for my opinion, and they did give me permission to call them stupid if I wanted to, because they were uncertain if what they did was the right thing or not. I don't think they were stupid. I think what they did was very ethical, and they're going to sleep better, and their tenants are going to be happy. Happy tenants don't leave a property, and happy tenants don't trash a property. This person owned a rental, and the tenants were paying $11.50 a month. I don't know what the area average rents in their area are, and they didn't share the actual details of what their binder strategy was. But in the conversation, in this experience with the tenant, where they shared what the area average rents are, which weren't included in the email, but the area average rents were significantly more than $11.50 a month. The person was hoping to get the rents around $1,400. So that is a $250 increase. Imagine if your landlord came to you and just said, hey, we're going to raise your rent $250. So it's $11.50. I want you to pay $1,400. And I want you to pay for water and sewer now. What a jerk, right? You'd want to leave. You'd want to do something to make it hard on the landlord. You'd probably go to social media, call him a bunch of names. Instead of just raising the rent, this person used the binder strategy, which is called the binder strategy because we actually use a 3-ring binder, where the person shared with the tenants, here's what I paid for your property. Here's a map of all the rentals in the area. Here is a printed out list of all of the rentals in the area that if you were to move, they have the same number of bedrooms, and this is what your rents would be. And again, they didn't share the exact details, but in that conversation, while the landlord was hoping to get the rent to around $1,400 because that would make them happy, but not wanting to be a jerk and doing a significant $250 a month rental increase, they shared this data with the tenant. The tenant came back and said, I totally understand your position. Would you please raise my rent to $1,650? The tenant asked for a $500 rent increase. If the owner had agreed, the tenants would be happy. They asked for an increase. They knew it made more sense than moving out, the cost of moving, the cost of renting another place. They knew their budget, and they knew that's what they can afford. The owner, who is watching my content, is familiar with the binder strategy, sat back and thought, I'm uncomfortable with that. A $500 a month increase would make me feel like a bad person. I'm guessing that part. But somewhere in their mind, they thought that the best thing to do would be to tell the tenant, instead of $1,650, I'm more comfortable at $1,450, plus you're going to pay for water and sewer. So it'll be less than the $1,650 that you've suggested as your new rent. The tenant agreed. The landlord is happy. They were hoping to get a $250 increase. Instead, they got a $300 increase. And the tenant is paying for sewer and water. And the tenant is happy. The tenant feels like they're getting a deal because they're educated. They know what it would actually cost to rent a similar place in the area now. And they don't want to move. Imagine the relationship that this owner and that tenant now has. The tenant suggested rent $200 higher than what the landlord set the rent at. Landlording done right. I'm not saying that's what I would do. I'm not saying that's what you should do. Some people would just say, oh, $1,650 would be great. Let's do that. Happy tenant, happy landlord. But sometimes, and I've done similar, I've suggested less than what the tenant suggested. I've also suggested more when the tenant thought of a smaller increase, because it is a conversation. It's not like you ask the tenant what they think is fair, and whatever they say, you're going to go with. I have had people say, well, what would you do if the tenant asked for rent to stay the same or go down? Well, then the tenant's not paying attention to area average rents, because remember, the binder strategy can go the other way. If your rents are so high that the area average rents are below yours, the tenant should be using the binder strategy on you to try to get you to lower the rent. In this case, an owner presented the options to a tenant, included them in the conversation. What tenant ever gets to be included in the conversation of setting their rents? The tenant made a suggestion that they were comfortable with, that they would have renewed a lease with, and then got offered a lower amount. I think this is brilliant, and I don't expect it to go this way every time, but imagine how good this owner feels having this experience with their tenant. They got more than the increase that they were hoping for. The tenant got less than what they suggested. Everybody walks away happy. And the owner would have been a jerk if they suggested a smaller increase on their own without having this conversation. So do me a favor, and in the comments below, let me know what your experience with the binder strategy has been. Have you ever suggested a lower amount than what your tenant did? I hope this video at least made you think. Until my next video, thanks for coming to my Dion Talk.
We're sorry, the number you have dialed is not in service at this time.